Reddit's real-life nightmares delves into spine-tingling true tales sourced directly from Reddit's most chilling threads. Encounter encounters with the supernatural and brushes with mortal danger as ordinary individuals share their harrowing experiences with the inexplicable and the macabre. Led by it, read it. Prepare to be gripped by fear as we journey into the heart of darkness. Subscribe now to confront the chilling truths hidden within Reddit's darkest corners.
Forgot my password. About a month ago I went over to my girlfriend's house. Except I felt really uneasy when I went into the living room. Turns out, they replaced a china cabinet with one of her grandmothers whom passed away a few months back. Her grandmother was bedridden in the hospital and I've ever gotten to meet her. I felt uneasy the whole time. Being around her grandmother's furniture made me so anxious and almost sad. When I told her, she said it was probably nothing. She went to the bathroom. When I went over to the cabinet, it was about 6 feet tall. Dark wood. It had 2 doors on the side and glass up front. And in the back was a mirror. I was looking at the teacups and small baby dolls when I could swear I saw someone in the mirror behind me. Just a silhouette. I called out to my girlfriend. But as I did, I heard a shrill screech from the bathroom. I start pounding on the door. And it opens. She was sitting on the floor, crying. She said she saw someone in the bathroom mirror. We booked it out of her house. No shoes. No jacket. Nothing, and right to my car. I dove for an hour or so. With no destination. When I returned her to her house, her mom was sitting on the doorstep. She said she kept seeing shadows move. Nope. I will go out of my way to make things like this happen. Someone claims their house is haunted. I want to see. Someone said they think they saw a skinwalker. My friends are looking. I've never found anything. But this was something else. Machine_gun_Murphy. I was on Manassas battlefield with my father when I was younger. We were sitting on the back of his tailgate eating McDonald's on top of a hill looking at some cannons. It was foggy and misty out that day with a slight chill, November I think. All of a sudden we see a man dressed in full Civil War attire waving at us standing by the cannons, about 50 to 100 meters away. My dad had a pair of binoculars with him and we got a closer look of the man. He appeared to be in a Confederate uniform and was standing stationary, only moving his arm to wave. It was a "come here" wave. My dad thought there was a reenactment going on and that the man needed help. So my dad walked down to the man while I watched with the binoculars. When my dad got close to the man, he stopped walking and had a confused posture. After a couple seconds next to the man, he turns around and sprints back to me. He proceeds to throw everything in the back of the truck and we leave the battlefield in a hurry. My dad said while walking down there, the man slowly disappeared, and my dad said he got the strangest feeling in his stomach and mad chills. To this day my dad gets the chills and goosebumps telling the story. My dad saw combat in Vietnam, so he is not an easy guy to scare. From my perspective, my dad was right next to the guy and never disappeared. We don't know what we saw, but I think it was a ghost. TLDR, I think we saw a ghost of a Confederate soldier. Just shut the door. I've had a similar thing happen to me. My family and I were in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania when I was 8 or so. We had just arrived that day, but my dad wanted to check out and get pictures of this memorial called the Eternal Light Peace Memorial before the park closed. The sun was just about to set. My mother, brother, and I all stayed in the car because we were cranky, hungry little shits. But my dad got out to look at the statue and cannons for a few minutes. All of a sudden me and my mom saw 2 figures appear on the edge of the field out of the woods, opposite the side we were parked. They were all tan, I mean head to toe, there was no other color of hair/skin/eyes at all, and one was pointing in the general direction of the memorial. They went back into the woods and then reappeared, but with another one in tow. The incident lasted about 3 to 5 minutes total, and they just stood there looking. It was such an eerie feeling. To this day my mom and I have not forgotten about it. We could see them fairly clearly because they weren't too far away. The creepiest part was that we went to a museum the next day and they had old Confederate uniforms on display. We came to one that was labeled that it was from Tennessee, I don't remember more details, and it was the same exact color as the ones we saw. Other uniforms had slight variations, but this was dead on. My mom and I were 100% sure of it. Physically 123. That reminds me of one of my trips to Gettysburg. I took a picture of Sprengler Springs, I believe it was called, and not only did my camera die about 4 times while trying to take a picture, I had to keep changing batteries. The one picture I did get, you could clearly see the outline of a soldier standing next to it glancing downward. Another weird thing was I took a picture of my ex standing under the rocks at Devil's Den and he made a silly face with his mouth open, but the picture ended up looking like his mouth was stretched super far down his face. Other than that, some pictures just had a ridiculous amount of orb-like things in them. Also, we stayed at the super haunted Farnsworth Inn there, and all night someone was pounding on the wall on and off in the room next to ours, so it was banging even with our heads while laying in bed. We complained about it in the morning to the staff and we found out the room was unoccupied that night. Sad face. D_on. When I was a child, I lived in an old Victorian house, and I would always hear laughing while I was trying to sleep. I was an only child with a single mother, and when I was about 5 to 6, I would wake up hearing laughter in the hallway in the middle of the night. After mentioning this to my mom, she swore it was probably just the TV being left on late. One night, I awoke hearing the laughter in my room. I went to sit up but felt like there was someone holding my shoulders down, invisible hands gripping into my shoulders while I heard laughing. I screamed my little heart out. My mum ran into my room, flicking on the bedside lamp, convincing me it was just a dream, until I said, "But my shoulders hurt." She lifted up my t-shirt and there were 2 adult-sized hand prints on my shoulders. I honestly thought I had imagined it and that it had never happened, but the other day I mentioned it in passing to my mom and she went blanket white and said, "I don't want to remember that." Original. I was walking up the hall at work and my heel went out from under me and bent my leg wonky. I didn't even fall but lowered myself down because my leg felt weird. The woman whose office I was walking past came out to find out what the loud crunchy noise she heard was. The noise was my leg breaking and she was more traumatized than I was. She had nightmares for a while and had a hard time seeing me when I returned to work. TLDR, I gave my coworker PTSD with the sound of my fibula snapping. Deleted user. I have a fear of spiders because of a hunting trip I took with my dad and family when I was a kid. I don't enjoy shooting things, not an animal rights activist, but I think killing for game or bragging rights and not for food is wasteful and barbaric. I had brought my Game Boy and they stationed me at one of the ground blinds so I could use the radio to tell the others if I saw any deer headed their way. I got bored as shit and got tired of grinding in Pokemon, so I turned off my game and started rifling through my backpack to find another. As I did this, I heard a strange whooshing sound that sounded very close, but I couldn't find anything. I walked around outside the blind and as I came around the backside I saw that the entire outer wall was covered in a mass of fucking interlinked daddy long leg spiders. I considered running like hell, but I had no idea where the camp was. I had been driven out to the blind. My solution was to use my Kenevoff and the lighter from my backpack to blowtorch all the spiders off. Because stupid, that's why. The plan backfired because I made the mistake of standing downwind of the spiders. The second the fire hit them they all let go and flew at me. The entire wall of them. Flaming, flying, spiders. I immediately started screaming and rolling around on the ground. I took off all of my clothes and immediately phoned my dad on the radio and told him to come get me and that we were going home. I have never sworn or cried so profusely in my life. I eventually went through therapy regarding this event, and now I just hate spiders in general and prefer not to be around them. Sad art. Similar experience with bugs. I have a huge fear of mass amounts of bugs. Something about them making those disgusting chattering sounds and being clumped together in nasty heaps just makes me gag and feel gross. For about a week in high school the school gets infested with ladybugs. I mean infested. They would coat the walls, get in your backpack and climb on top of each other in weird amorphous mounds everywhere. My friends knew about my issues with insects and decided it would be funny to put a bunch of ladybugs in a bucket and dump them on me. They dumped the bugs on me in class and I ran out of the classroom screaming and crying. I had an afro at the time and some of them got trapped in my hair. It took forever to wash them out. I didn't speak to my friends for a few weeks because it was really traumatizing. Before this ladybugs were cute harmless little bugs, now I can't stand them and am just more petrified of large amounts of insects in general. King_of_Avalon. I'm not particularly afraid of spiders, but I feel the exact same way about cockroaches. As a child I lived in Florida, and those bastards are massive. And some of them can fly at you. And unlike most other creatures where if you stomp your foot and make noise they run away, roaches run at you if threatened. I'm not sure when the terror started. According to my mother, when I was less than a year old, she caught me trying to eat one. But the real problem was a house we moved into when I was around 10. I'm not the most organized person, and I tend to have lots of papers and clothes lying about the floor. My room had carpeted floors, but my sister's room had hardwood floors. One night, she was sleeping with the dog in her room and we both had our doors open. Something wakes me up early, it's still pitch black. I hear a rustling noise, sort of a light scratching, and I know exactly what it is, but I can't get out of bed because the noise is coming from between me and the switch on the wall. So I freeze in terror. Suddenly, out of nowhere, I hear my dog jump off my sister's bed, run into my room, and start making all sorts of commotion in the middle of my room. I gather the courage to leap out of bed and over him and turn on the light. That genius animal had rushed into my room and crushed it to death with his paw. I look down to see him staring up at me over the remains of a massive cockroach that's now squished into my bedroom carpet. I fucking love that dog. But it doesn't end there. I get a little bit of sleep for a few more hours, but I had to wake up really early for school since I had to take 3 bus journeys to the other side of the county to get there. I eat breakfast and take a shower, and I come back into my bedroom to find my shoes, no socks, I'm just running to put the bags out in the bin outside. I slip my left foot into my shoe, uneventful. I slip my right foot in, and something fucking pinches my foot. I pull my foot out and 2 of those massive motherfuckers are lying down in my shoe. 2 of them. And they're huge. Moral of that story: A. Always check your shoes first, and B. Cockroaches can pinch. But all of that pales in comparison to the worst thing that ever happened. I was back in Florida when I was a teenager, and my parents were in Italy or Switzerland or wherever, so I was taking care of their house while they were away. They called a pest control guy to come and spray the house, so he shows up and we chat and then he climbs into the attic to put down some gel stuff. He comes back down, we chat, and then as he's leaving he casually mentions that I will see some increased activity in the next 24 hours or so as the poison flushes them into the open to die. I sit down to use the computer, when after about 20 minutes I hear a familiar rustling noise above me. I jump out of my chair and look up. The ceiling has got those recessed spotlight things in them, and I can see their feet and antennae sticking out of the gaps between the lights. Suddenly, about 3 squeeze through the gaps and fall onto the living room floor, going nuts. They start squeezing through the cracks around the mirrors in the minibar area. I rush into my bathroom and they are fucking everywhere. They're coming through the taps and the sinks, the cracks around the light fixtures and any plumbing areas. They're genuinely falling from the sky and coming up through the pipes. Needless to say, this whole time I'm having a full-blown panic attack. I'm spraying Raid and throwing my dad's work boots all over the house, crying and standing on top of stools. My 2 poor dogs are just staring at me like, what's wrong with him? It was the stuff of nightmares coming true, and it lasted for a good 2 hours before they stopped. And though I wish I could say that was my last encounter with them, I have unfortunately had others that were also terrible. None were as bad as that day, though. Fortunately, I've lived in Europe for nearly a decade now, so I don't have to worry about those bastards anymore. But the experience still haunts me. Deleted user. I'm terrified of cockroaches too. I also grew up in Florida, and I guess that seeing them so often created my fear. I live in Alabama now. My first few years here, I lived on the river. Never had cockroaches but had to deal with a shit ton of spiders. I moved in with my boyfriend in an old house near downtown Huntsville, Alabama. The first cockroach I saw was as long as my middle finger. I started tearing up and yelling for my boyfriend. He thought it was so silly that I was terrified of them. The last 3 I have seen have been roughly that long. I have also been by myself when I saw them, so I had to woman up and kill them. They give me the creeps every time I see one. I'm so paranoid. There is one crawling on the ceiling above me. I know your pain. I could not imagine having them crawl out from everywhere. Yuck. The flying ones are the worst ones by far. Fuck those flying fucks. Tegla. I have a paranoid fear of spiders as well, and this isn't really helping. I have a story as well. I was in my parents' house in the countryside for one night a couple of years ago. So, I'm browsing Facebook or some site when I decide I want to light up a joint. So I turn the light on, and there is this massive spider on my bed, staring at me. Like big, thick, hairy bastard the size of my palm. The first instinct was to kill it because there is no way it'll spend the night there with that thing around. So, this was toolshed/house split in 2, with one part being a storage room and the other being my room. Now, my dad is a fireman, and we had that long axe which is sharp on one side and like a sledgehammer on the other. Long story short, what followed was an epic battle which lasted an hour and a half. Seriously, he was really fast and I was really scared. Eventually, I came out victorious, but couldn't sleep for the rest of the night. I have never spent a single night there since then.